If you or someone you know struggles with addiction, stay right here for the Recovery Boys. Lewis Finch and Macon Moy discuss alcoholism, drug addiction, co-occurring disorders, and life in recovery. And now, here's Lewis and Macon.
So I'm Macon.
And I'm Lewis.
And we're the Recovery
Boys.
Lewis, how you doing today?
I told you it was going to be cheesy, right?
Yeah. Cheesy, well that's the nicest thing we've been called this week, I can tell you that. Lewis, how you doing?
Doing great.
We have been busy, haven't we?
I was tired last week, I'm not tired this week.
Yeah, well, I think we're probably energized because of all the stuff that we've been doing. We have
Yeah.
not been in Raleigh. We have been doing what we've been doing at different places this week, and it's been really interesting. And we've helped some people, which always makes us feel better.
Yes.
But I'm really excited about our guest today, and I'll
Yes.
let you introduce him.
Okay, we have two guys here who I've known Graham the longest,
Yeah,
ironically.
probably.
Graham Dorgy and Justin McClendon with New Waters Recovery.
Yep.
And as Macon said, we're excited because what they're bringing to the Raleigh area specifically, and I know you guys are probably going to feed more than just Raleigh.
Mm-hmm.
Because
That's the hope, at least.
well, exactly. So you're gonna, and I'll have you go over all this as we talk. But because of what you guys are bringing to the table, which is a level of detox, which we've never had in the state. We've got one potential like candidate in the state right now,
Mm-hmm.
but they tend to waver back and forth between the old way to do it and a more progressive, higher end way to do it. The biggest thing about detox is you're dealing with a person at a very acute state,
Yep.
and they're very vulnerable and they're very emotional, and all that goes into the detox process. But what you guys are going to be setting up here is something that I personally would be incredibly proud to be able to refer to. Because I won't have to worry about what's going to happen to them when we get down to you guys,
Yeah.
which is always the case. We have, and I don't mind saying this, we have horror stories about referring people to detoxes at local hospitals.
Oh, God, yeah.
And I'm not going to name any names, but it's if you've asked about them and you know anything about them, they're horrible. They're horrible stories. But again, they're dealing with a generalized population.
Yep.
And they're also dealing with folks who don't have any resources in a lot of cases, and back in most cases, don't have the resources. So what I found, and one of the reasons that We Set Well went up, was we deal with a group of folks, typically 40 to 60, probably the sweet spot. Now, do we have 20 and 30-year-olds? Occasionally, but that's the sweet spot. And those people tend to be more successful. They tend to be more mature. Some of them are. I wasn't, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But to get them in here, sometimes that's the barrier, because they don't think they're like everybody else in recovery.
Right. And that's their entry point.
And that's their
right?
entry point.
That's
So-
their first taste.
So let's do this. Let's start this way. Graham, kind of give us some background as to what puts you in this, because when I met you, you were working for, you were a business development person for Voyage Recovery down in West Palm, right?
That's correct. Yep.
And you were doing a couple of things, weren't you?
Probably even prior to that, but maybe it was Voyage at that point. But yeah, I've traditionally worked in the outreach business development area of the industry, and I guess obviously thank you very much for having us here, guys,
Yes,
and
thank you.
kind
Listen.
of giving us this platform to introduce what we're doing and introduce what we're bringing to
Sure.
the community and all of that. We really appreciate it, and thank you to Lewis as well, because you definitely, whether you know it or not, have been instrumental in us coming to this area, right? So,
I did not know that.
in the beginning,
Scream
you
loud
were,
enough
you were
and
one of
be-
the first people that
Good.
I actually met with, here, obviously, when I was doing market research and was interested in Raleigh and had kind of, was working through the licensing process and was trying to learn a little bit more about what that all looked like and what kind of barriers there were there, and obviously talking to some of the local providers to find out kind of what resources were lacking in the community, and presented this to you, and you were like, God damn, we need that so bad.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
we have been waiting for that.
And that was what, 4 or 5 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was probably about
Was it 3 years ago?
Yeah, probably 2.5, 3 years ago. So once I left Voyage, I started working on this project kind of slowly in the background. I was doing other work for some other companies, Driftwood Recovery out in Austin, Texas. Alpha 180 did a little work with them for a bit. So you know, I was working on this while I was kind of doing some consulting contract work for some other programs and kind of building this out. And funny enough, you know, the pandemic actually, you know, kickstarted it, and that's where things like really started taking off because, you know, as we all know, there was a lot of uncertainty. You know, being in Texas, you know, I was able to find some investors to help us put this thing together that traditionally had been involved in more like kind of oil projects and things like that. And when, as we know, when the pandemic hit, you know, oil crashed. People were looking to get out, diversify. And the timing of it all just kind of worked out very, very nicely. So we were able to kind of raise the capital pretty quickly to do this. And for me, it was really important to raise, you know, enough capital to do this the right way, right? And to have a really, you know, a good runway for us to get this thing up and running and make sure that we had kind of a year and a half there, you know, of overhead, and then also, you know, have enough money on hand to get the best staff around, you know. And part of that was, you know, when I got introduced to Justin and everybody that's kind of come on board on our team up to this point in leadership roles, we've been really fortunate and have a pretty amazing group of people.
I would agree. So let me back up some of it.
Yeah.
Why this space? Why the addiction space? What
Why?
What got you involved in this space?
So I got sober.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Shocker.
Yes.
Really?
So 2008, went to the Hanley Center
I've heard of that.
with one of our colleagues that's now involved in New Waters, Thomas Hogshead, who's director of support services. So Thomas and I go back to actually family, knows each other from the Northeast, from, you know, Long Island years and years ago, and then you know, we got to know each other obviously better when we were at the Hanley Center together. He's a local Raleigh boy. He's been here for about. He wasn't raised here. Father was from Greensboro, but he has been here for about 25 years.
Well, he's a North Carolinian too, so he knows the state.
For sure. So, you know, really, you know, obviously been working in the field. So went through Hanley 2008. Then kind of did some recovery type jobs after that. Stayed down in Florida from the Northeast. Was 26 years old when I entered Hanley. I was fortunate enough that I didn't have a family, kids, you know, things that were really kind of holding me back. And, you know, the suggestion was, you need to go to sober living, you need to stay down here. And I did that and stayed in Florida for 12 years. And after about 2 years working recovery jobs of different sorts, decided that I wanted to work in this field. And I went back to the Hanley Center, and that was kind of my first job in the industry was back at Hanley. So,
see, I didn't know that. So,
yeah.
Did you know Andrea, and were you there?
She was there after
okay.
me. So I was there kind of 2010 to like 13-ish. So that was when it was Hanley Center. Then Karen came in, I think, in maybe 2012 or something like that. And so I was there for a little bit as Karen had merged with them.
The Karen Foundation.
Karen Foundation, right. So, and then my role there was director of alumni, and in that role I was doing a lot of fundraising and trying to kind of, you know, really what I wanted to do was, it was very much more of like a fundraising type role when I stepped into it. And, you know, for my mindset, I was like, well, this doesn't seem to be set up in the right way. Like we're essentially kind of just hitting people up for, you know, for the Hanley Foundation for donations and stuff once they leave, but there's really no like real support mechanism there for them as alumni once they leave the program, you know. So we were really trying to kind of bring in more of a clinical field where we were, you know, doing a lot of alumni events. We were setting up these kind of pods all over the country and trying to make it a very different, more supportive alumni
Because they do draw
process.
from all over the country.
Yeah, I mean, Hanley has been around for, 40 years at this point, probably, and maybe more. And so, yeah, they're.
So is this where you met this guy?
So didn't meet him there. So funny enough, gentleman who was part of kind of the Hanley organization had mentioned him to me, and then Thomas, who
Was that Terry?
What's that?
Is that Terry?
Nope. This was Robert Rowland.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Yep.
Okay, all
So
right.
Robert Rowland and somebody had mentioned him to me, and I went to Robert and said, "Do you know this guy, Justin McClendon?" He said, "You need to hire him." And I was like, "Okay, good to know." Then,
I said the exact same thing.
yeah, you know.
I was told the exact same thing, and I did the exact same thing you did too.
Yeah, totally. And then Desiree, when I spoke with Desiree Cicini, who's our chief marketing officer, who's formerly with Acadia, is really one of the go-to people in this community for, what I love about Desiree too is that she's just an incredible resource and will, I've seen her over like the last kind of 2 to 3 months where, we brought her and Justin and Thomas on board full time back in like November. And she's still manning the phones, and we're not bringing people into our program
Right.
obviously for a little bit. We're kind of scheduled to open June, July, but she is spending hours on the phone placing people, because that's just Desiree.
That's what she
she's
does.
passionate.
Yeah.
She's and she will go above and beyond for anybody, and it's just an incredible resource for
Well,
everybody around here.
what she recognizes, kind of what
Yep.
we all four recognize, that you get to this position in life, and I'm gonna get to you in a
Sure.
second. I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah.
through with you yet. But you get to this place in life because of the things that you did,
Absolutely.
and the way that and I tell the people all the time, like that young woman that you make just talk with us, you scream, she thinks that we're here for her. She's here for us.
Yeah.
Everybody that comes here, we screen. I do it because it keeps me. I don't want to go back there.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I compare myself, but I go. I don't want to. I hear these stories, and I don't want to go through that crap anymore.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna get back to you. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So Justin,
Mhm.
you and I met through a fellow by the name of Terry
That's right.
Shapiro,
Yep, that's
who
correct.
also was with Hanley at the time. Another great guy, great resource in this community.
Absolutely.
He's one of the good
One
guys.
of the best, yeah.
One of the good guys.
Knows every
Knows
person
everybody.
in the
Yes, he does.
world.
Very well connected. And I got the call from Terry like you did, and he said, "You have a position up there?" And I said, "For who?" And he told me. He goes, I said, "I don't know. Have him call me." And it was about that was 4 years ago. How long have you been?
Yeah,
up there?
almost. Actually, in July will be 5 years that I've lived up here.
Really?
So yeah, believe it
All
or
right, so you
not.
came up, you worked with us for a period of time. You then struck out on your own. You went to work for a large collaborative,
Correct.
and then you came back as our clinical director.
That's correct.
And you set the world on fire, as you know, as we know. And then you left and went somebody else. You did it with somebody else for a period of time, and then this guy came along and kind of grabbed you.
That's correct.
And again, powerhouse. I agree with you. We have a powerhouse team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Between, I don't know Thomas as well as I know him and
He's-
Desiree.
The whole group, and for me, like that is the most important thing.
Yes.
It is the people, it is the team, it is, and for us, like from our first conversations, and Justin and I started talking almost 2 years ago
Yeah.
at this point,
Yep.
and he was like, I'm interested, like, and we had a little bit of a, it took us about a year to find, the building that we're going into. We originally were in having conversations with them a year prior in the beginning of the pandemic. We couldn't come to terms with. We went in a different direction. Had a couple buildings fall through at that point. Came back to them a year later, and were able to kind of come to terms with them at that point. And so it took us a little while, to get there. And luckily, these guys were willing to kind of wait and see what developed and see what happened, and obviously we were able to kind of make it happen. So, but going back to the team and all that, it's interesting because once I sat down with Desiree, she had the same thing. She said, "Listen, this is what I want to do," and I'd known Desiree for a few years at that point, and I was like, "I need you on the team," and she said, "I'll tell you what, you get Justin, I'm in." And I was like, okay, I got my
Nice.
marching orders.
That's
Right.
good.
So,
Good
and that
good.
again just reassured. I was like, I need this guy,
Right.
Very
So,
flattering. Very
yeah.
flattering.
So, and really from those first conversations too, it was really a foundational component for us is creating an incredible culture, and putting our staff first and foremost, and going above and beyond for our team, and trying to find balance in our life, and going down to you know, even like an open PTO policy. You know, we're going to institute a policy where there's no vacation policy. If you need to take time off and you're going through something, or there's something going on with your family, like, we want to be there to support you, to kind of love you through that. And, you know, at the end of the day, we are all family here, right? And this thing doesn't work if our people aren't balanced, if they don't feel like they're respected and valued and taken care of, then they're not going to provide a top-notch program for our clients.
So speaking of that, so just to clarify, so your title is
CEO.
and Justin,
Executive director.
but yours is more of a clinical.
Yes.
Correct. Yeah.
So
Clinical day-to-day operations.
Because your background is clinical.
Correct. Yeah.
And you got here kind of like him, right?
Yeah,
and me
absolutely.
and Macon.
Yeah. 100%.
So you're in recovery as well.
In recovery as well. You want me to tell the story real quick?
I'd love it.
So actually, didn't work in this field for quite some time. I spent most of my adult life and young adult life working as a chef. And, you know, yes, through my own struggles and things like that, found recovery.
There's no alcoholism in the
Yeah,
restaurant
which is a
department,
great
is there?
Zero.
Zero.
I
Exactly.
I actually introduced that to that industry.
You're the one. Huh? It's patient zero. There you are.
Patient zero.
That's right.
So, you know, through recovery and just trying to figure out how to navigate that, you know, how am I going to continue to kind of work in that field and, you know, live this healthy and different lifestyle. And eventually I just started, you know, there was a pull there to like do something else. And eventually just doing some soul searching and things like that, it led me back to school. And I went and finished my undergrad, which I did not finish before because I was too busy getting high and drunk and, you know, working and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
So I went back to school, did my undergrad in psychology, master's degree in clinical mental health counseling, you know, started working in like psychiatric stabilization, mobile crisis. I helped open a psychiatric PHP and things like that. And then got out is when I was kind of like finishing up my master's program. My whole time that I was in school, I was like, I knew I wanted to help other people, but I kept telling myself, like, I don't want to work in the addictions field. I was like, I don't know. I just, too close to home maybe or something like that. And the first time I actually did an internship at a residential treatment center, addiction treatment center, and I was like, what's wrong with me? Like, this is what I need to be doing with my life. And that's literally what I've done ever since.
Did you go to a treatment center too, or?
In Florida, yeah. So I went to treatment a few times, if I'm being honest. What's that?
Palm Partners?
No, so I actually went to the place that I actually got sober at was actually an IOP program.
Okay.
You know, I'd done treatment a couple of different times and stuff like that. First time I actually did treatment, I was an adolescent actually in Georgia, which was not a great experience. It was basically a psychiatric hospital, the Bradley Center, I think it was called.
Oh, yeah.
But so the place I actually got sober was Total Recovery Now. It was actually an outpatient IOP program. But I think that the biggest thing was at that point I just had the motivation, I had the willingness and the desire to actually make a change and be serious about that. So yeah.
So how many years has it been now since you got into the field? Is that?
Since
you're not
I've
that
gotten
old.
into the field, yeah, I'm not that old. I actually turned 40 in July.
You do turn 40 or did?
No, I do. I'm
Okay.
turning 40 in July.
So how long have you been in the field?
So I've been in the field total for probably about 12 years
Okay.
now. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. about
Well, and
12
again,
years.
why do we point this out is because if you're here to make money, good luck.
Yeah, absolutely.
You picked the wrong field.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know,
You
I
can
said-
make a lot more
I said
money
this
doing
last
different
week, and I
things.
probably say it every week. We're a for-profit, just not yet.
Yeah.
Okay. But we do it for other reasons because life, the way we're living it, wasn't worth a damn.
Right.
Yeah.
And we know that this is a better life, and we know that if we can help other people, it helps us too. So,
Yeah.
all right. So you guys get together and you formulate this business plan for a detox.
Yeah.
And I guess Justin, let me start with you.
Sure.
Why is detox such an important part of the recovery process?
Why is it so? I think it's a crucial part, and I feel like I could talk about this for hours. But one thing is that you got to have a starting point somewhere, right? Whatever that looks like, whatever the individual situation that the person finds themselves in, there's got to be a starting point. And I think especially when we break it down into levels of care and how research and has designed treatment to function, detox is supposed to be, if you're clinically appropriate for that, supposed to be that starting point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so depending on the severity of someone's substance use disorder, there's going to be some detoxing or withdrawal process that's going to take place, right? And I think what, again, this is getting in the weeds here, but, some people are going to be more appropriate or less appropriate for an inpatient 24-hour, medically managed detox facility. Some people maybe are not that severe, and maybe it's not going to take that much. But detox in general is again, it's number one, crucial to be able to manage the symptoms, make sure that someone's embarking on the journey of recovery in a way that's going to be safe and that's going to set them up for the best possible chances of success.
So I want you to touch on it a little more, because I think when people hear detox, they think of like a short stint
Sure.
in a resort.
Right.
And there's the significance of detox for me is you're dealing with life and death at that
Absolutely.
point.
100%.
And people don't understand it. You hear the term medical detox.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a reason they call it that, because if you don't do it that way, there's a good likelihood that things aren't going to turn out very well. You could
100%.
actually die.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's where,
Yeah.
that's, to me, the crucial point. And I mean, it's one thing to treat people a certain way, but it's another thing to stabilize and keep people alive.
Yeah.
What you guys are planning on doing is doing both.
Right.
You're going to treat them nice.
Mm-hmm.
What a concept, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And
Should be
actually
comfortable.
keep
It
them from
doesn't-
dying.
It doesn't need to be a horrible experience. You don't need to be in a hospital and an institution, and obviously our program will have kind of maybe some aspects of that, but we tried to really design it so it would be more of that kind of spa-like feel. It would be comfortable. People would be treated with respect and dignity. Obviously, confidentiality is a huge part of what we do. Our program is, at least starting out, will be primarily self-pay. Working with out-of-network benefits similar to what you do, and that very similar clientele to Wellwyn, executive, kind of more concierge than anything. But yeah, it doesn't have to be a horrible experience. Yes, you're dealing with a highly acute client. It's a medical situation, but there are things that we can implement too holistically that will help alleviate some of the symptoms and some of that. So, infrared saunas, IV therapy. Acupuncture, massage, all of these things that we'll be doing at our program as and as part of the program, not as like extra ancillary charges. This is something that's available to every person that comes through our doors, right?
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, and in that way, it's I feel like if you set it up where you're kind of dinging everybody for all these like extra charges, people aren't really utilizing it. Whereas if everybody's getting IVs every day, and I do IVs personally in my own life when I'm, I travel a ton, and I'm constantly, whether you're worn down or whatever, getting some, some supplements or vitamins, to kind of boost your immune system and all that. But even if you have somebody who's, a 60-year-old chronic alcoholic who, is just totally deficient of any sort of vitamins and nutrients and minerals and all that, that stuff can help them kind of, get to their baseline a
Well,
little bit quicker.
they don't come to you in good shape.
No, 100%.
I mean, forget about the alcohol and the drug part.
Yep.
Their bodies are breaking down.
Their bodies are breaking
And
down.
that's what you got. That's what you're battling with.
Yep, 100%.
So-
And we're battling with insurance, who's saying that typically these guys are able to do this in 3 to 5 days.
All right,
you
so
know?
let's get in the meat.
Yeah.
Let's get in the meat and potato of this, because this is where I love
Right.
to talk about this.
Sure.
All right, so a typical detox is how long? And I know there's no typical detox, but
Yeah, I mean, I would say
pick a drug. Pick a
right.
pick
And
a
I
drug.
think a really good average, and kind of what I based all of our projections and everything off of, was really kind of a 5-day average stay.
Yeah. Okay, but that could be 10 days on.
Could be anywhere from
one end.
3 to 14.
Yeah.
Okay, 14
so
days, good. Okay.
a light alcohol detox might be more like a 3-day. Obviously somebody maybe a little bit younger who's not as complex and all that stuff. But if you have somebody who's pretty progressed, benzodiazepine with some alcohol use, that's like, those are high risk seizure.
Okay.
Those clients, that might be a 14-dayer.
Right,
That could
yeah.
be 10 to 14 day, depending on obviously how long they've been using, how much they're using, all those variables.
And it's more than simply getting their BAC down to 0, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So kind of explain that too. I think people don't understand that concept.
Yeah, so yeah, it's much more than that, right? So that's just the beginning of the process. As a matter of fact, I mean, shortly after someone, if it's alcohol specifically, right? If shortly after the alcohol is no longer in their bloodstream, so to speak, right? So they're gonna, blow a 0-0 on a breathalyzer. That's probably the least dangerous part of it. It's not until they start reaching into that first, second, sometimes even third day after coming off of alcohol that we'll start to see some, pretty significant fluctuations in their vitals and things like that. Seizure risk becomes really high and things like that. And there's a lot of that stuff that really, really needs to be managed. There's such thing as an outpatient detox. We were actually just chatting about this a little while ago. And the issue with that is, again, if we go back to the severity or the age, other health factors, things like that, unless someone has kind of been through this before, it's really difficult to predict exactly what's going to happen with an individual.
Well, you're dealing with people who are, I mean, let's be honest. You tell somebody to take their, if they're alcoholic, you tell them to take, what's the drug?
Antabuse.
Tell them to take antabuse.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Right.
And it
Well,
doesn't
they just
affect
stop
their.
taking it if they want to drink
Yeah,
it. It's
so
like
you
the same
stop
thing with
taking it.
Suboxone.
Right.
It's like, you want to get high, you're taking this,
Yes.
opiate antagonist, and, well, if you stop taking it, then you can start
Right.
using it again, right?
Yeah.
With the
So-
real cigarettes, you still get high on that stuff.
Totally, yeah.
Even if you're taking it. So, all right. So the detox process takes between 3 and 12 and 14 days.
Correct.
So you are, and you brought up an interesting part about the outpatient detox. We have used that only because you guys weren't here.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Because the folks who
Well, there's a million things that could go wrong in that scenario.
absolutely,
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
most of the doctors are putting their
Really.
licenses on the line in some case,
Yeah,
and
sure.
they're taking a risk, their knowledge,
Yeah.
and most of these guys have done this a long time.
Right.
So they feel comfortable in doing it, but your basic psychiatrist will not do that.
It's very true.
And because the drugs you're dealing with to bring people under are like things like
Ativan, especially with
Ativan.
alcohol, that's a big one.
and Librium.
Ativan,
What's the old drug? I can't pronounce. Desiree used to correct me on. There's a drug that's been used for decades.
Valium,
No, it's the one, the anti-seizure medicine.
Keppra.
Well, that may be one, but
Keppra.
this is an
Keppra.
old. I gotta remember. I never can remember it. But
Well,
it's-
typically, I think Keppra would be used probably more than anything as an anti-seizure protocol at this point. I don't know which one that you're talking
I
about.
can't remember. But the reason is in that early state, because your body is morphing and changing,
Yeah.
you're more likely to have a seizure
Absolutely.
because your body's going to go, I give up.
Yeah.
You've screwed the pooch now, right?
Yeah.
So it's, and that's where that's the level. I want people to understand that's the level at which you're dealing with people like that every single day.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We see people somewhat like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So, every so often.
Every so often we have somebody.
But I will tell you something, and
And
sitting
you
here
get
listening to you guys, the thing that makes me excited about what you guys are getting ready to do because of what we do is it's not the addict or the alcoholic going through the detox or going through the dope sick or whatever. I mean, they're certainly primary, but it's the family that's trying to figure out what to do with them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing is that people hear the term detox all the time, don't have any idea what it is.
Yeah.
It's just like the parents that we say that think we can send their kids to treatment and 30 days later they pick them back up and they're all fixed.
Right.
That's the kind of knowledge that's out there. So
Yeah.
I think it's important when we see families, especially with this whole COVID thing, we see families who have to drop somebody that's in the middle of being dope sick at an emergency room.
Yeah.
They can't even walk in with them anymore
Right.
because you can't
Because of
sit
COVID,
there.
yeah.
And now you've got somebody who's dope sick or is throwing up for 10 or 12 hours in an emergency room. And it's not that the doctors or the staff there don't care about them. It's just that in the level of critical patients,
Right.
we don't, people like us, don't get treated as first-class citizens.
That's
We're
true.
second and third-class citizens.
Mhm.
And so knowing
And
that there's a place.
I'm tired of the man be doing me wrong too.
Yeah, yeah. But now there's a place where you guys, not only are you going to take care of the patient, but the family too. It's so
Absolutely.
important that the
And that-
family has some kind of support so they know what's going on. Because
So-
you try and get information out of an emergency room, they
won't.
they don't care.
Well, and they're dealing with another level of critical here.
Right.
So,
And that's and like kind of on not to
That's
jump
right.
in on you, but and that was one of the pieces too that I so why Detox in North Carolina, right? So a lot of it had to do with the licensing process, right?
Right.
I noticed and recognized that there was a need for Detox here. Then I dug into the licensing process. I found out, okay, residential, we need a certificate of need. That's probably going to be a long shot, or at least a fight. Detox, I need no certificate of need, super low barrier to entry. So we decided to go that route, thinking, all right, well, if we're established and establish ourselves in this community as an ethical provider and a great resource for the community, probably have a much easier time getting that residential license down
All
the
right,
road,
so hold on.
if possible,
You
right?
You tripped over, you brought me back in, so.
Yep.
Certificate of need,
Yep.
which seems to be, insurance is a close second. It seems to be the bane of the existence of the healthcare community in the state of North Carolina.
Yep. And
Because-
South Carolina is even looking to do
Right.
away with it at this point.
Doing
So,
away with certificate of need?
yeah,
Yep.
it's in front of the House right now. Went through the
Really?
Senate and
Yep.
and was voted that they would do away with it. And then the House, I don't know where it stands now, but that could be a year. I mean,
Which-
who knows before that?
Yeah, but these are
happens.
things.
It's a matter of opinion, I suppose. But I mean, like, it just makes sense. It's just something, especially right now with the epidemics that we're having, with substance use. Why have more things that are going to create more barriers for people?
so this-
providing
And just
treatment?
because there's beds doesn't mean they're good beds,
No,
right?
Exactly.
No,
And that's the problem, with that whole system is that, and when we kind of looked at competition in the area and all this, it's pretty clear to me that that it's very difficult to run an excellent, top-notch treatment program at a certain size, right? I think when you get to a certain size, it's hard. You're 100 beds. It's the staff is strained. You don't have the bandwidth to manage it the way that it needs to be managed. So when we were looking at doing this here, I originally really wanted 21 beds. The way that the building laid out, we were able to put 31 beds in it.
I was asking, I say 31.
So we're 31 beds,
Wow.
and which is a good number. And when the architect came back to me and said, "Well, I can put 31 beds in here," I was like, "Oh gosh, that makes me nervous." That's just a lot. But my other thought process after that was, well, maybe we can get an in-network contract that makes sense for us. Maybe we can do something with that surplus of beds and be a little bit more of a resource for the community in that sense. And then we started talking about, doing an assessment track as well. And
You're going to explain that one too?
yeah, so essentially, I was working with a group in, as I mentioned before, Driftwood Recovery in Austin, Texas, and incredible program. I truly believe one of the best programs out there right now. Just such an awesome clinical staff, amazing culture, and just they're just guys that are doing what they say,
Mhm.
And so they have a great assessment program out there that really was born out of necessity because they were seeing all these young adult clients who had cannabis-induced psychosis, who had something going on in that facet where really they were doing them a disservice by not doing further testing and not really figuring out and getting the data to figure out what's really going on here. This is a 22, 23-year-old kid where the underlying mental health starts to present itself around that age. Is this maybe a budding thought disorder? Is there something going on under the surface here that we're not really identifying? So by getting that data, by getting that information, we're then able to make a better plan for this person moving forward. Is this do we need to be looking at a primary psych program versus a substance use
But that
program?
person wouldn't necessarily be a candidate for detox, right?
Well, it depends.
You'd use the same materials.
Yes.
Okay, but
yes.
that's not, you're not bringing people in to detox and they're going to necessarily do a full-blown exam on them.
Not everybody, but
Right.
there could be, there will be those clients who are using. There'll be a client that is not using, who's having some sort of a psychotic event or something that's going on. I mean, that's probably a question more for the clinical team as far as how complex a patient we will take at that
Right,
point.
Sure.
But certainly, stabilization first and foremost, and then, working with a PsyD, a psychologist, and doing some further testing to really figure out what's going on here. And I think that's, to me, it's as far as the family goes, I think what we've seen over the last kind of 10 years with, the internet and with everything, the way that it's all set up is that everybody's, you got families who are going on there just Googling and trying to find these
Right.
programs themselves when they know absolutely nothing about these places. everything looks great on the
Everything
internet,
does.
you know.
Yeah. Amen.
And you got pictures of the beach, and you got this, and you got that, but nobody really knows what they're doing. So unfortunately, we've got a lot of folks who are going to programs that are not appropriate for them, and they're wasting a lot of money by doing this. And that's when we've got a lot of clients who have been in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 treatment episodes, and families have spent close to $1 million on care, and their kid is still sick.
Well, and that's where that exam
Right, and that's
comes into play.
Yeah, so we can stop. Everybody's in crisis. Everybody's freaking out. It's like stop, stabilize. Let's get some more data, and really the focus would be more of a strength-based assessment.
Is this a primary psych eval?
So that would be part of it,
That'd be
yeah.
part-
So
be part of it,
there's kind
okay.
of multi-layers to what that assessment would be, but essentially, so if somebody comes in specifically for that assessment track, they're going to get a medical and a psychiatric evaluation. So we're really going to try and get a good picture of what's going on medically, psychiatrically, and then the psychological piece as well. That they're going to do a really deep dive into some psychological
How long would something like this
testing.
take?
7 days.
7 days.
Yeah.
Wow.
7 to 10 days,
Okay.
depending on that. But that would be, if they needed stabilization, that would be obviously after that.
Yeah, so none of that would start until they were stabilized,
Right.
detox.
And then you could, there could be a client here or there that doesn't necessarily need that stabilization.
Right.
Maybe their meds need to be reworked or something's going on in that sense. So, but I think that it'll be super helpful for a lot of families to find the right care,
Right.
and that's where Desiree and I think come in, and collaborate pretty well together, because I've got a pretty good knowledge of a lot of the programs across the country. She's got a better knowledge of a lot of the programs in this southeast region than I do in all those contexts. So really, another huge aspect for us was developing, because Detox, I think, has done a really, really poor job at aftercare planning and making sure that folks are getting to the appropriate place after them, especially, standalone detoxes in general. We've got a pretty interesting opportunity to intervene on these folks and to get family involved, to get everybody who's bought in, involved in this case, find the leverage, and then, set them up for success after us, right?
Right.
And by utilizing the context that we have and figuring out what's gonna be the best program across the country for this person, what clinician at that program is gonna work well with this type of client, that's a big aspect is doing that heavy lifting, and a lot of places don't do it, like, some of the local programs, because they got 15 people on their caseload, and they can't do it. They don't have the bandwidth to do that heavy lifting. So, we'll have somebody who is their role is designated to, making sure that is happening correctly. So,
Yeah, to that, sorry.
no, after you.
So to that point, right, just kind of recap some of this, right? So we're going to do detox. We're going to have an assessment program. But we're going to really focus on pulling in the family, making sure that we're integrating them in that process, So we don't just do detox. We don't just do assessments, right? We really want to get everybody involved, get all the information that we need, figure out what's going to be the next appropriate step, because none of us are kidding ourselves to think that somebody's just going to come in and detox and then everything's fine and dandy, right? That this is very much, like we said, a starting point. It's a very initial step in a very long process. So to what Graham just said, whether it's an assessment or whether they're coming in for detox, really taking the time to give recommendations that are going to be individual to that person and are really going to be the thing to help set them up so they can have successful.
I want to go back to, we brought up the certificate of need thing.
Yeah.
Because I got ready to say this now, but when you graciously cut me off.
Getting political?
Well, no, I'm getting political. No.
Please
I'm
don't.
No, I'm getting political.
Yeah, we don't have enough time for
No,
that.
that's right. That's right. You guys have to be something. But so the way the certificate of need system works is you have to go in front of a body of the local legislature.
Yeah.
In our state, it's the General Assembly.
Yep.
And you have to beg them for beds or
The ability to
the
provide
ability to
beds.
provide beds.
Yeah.
And it's being done behind this cloak of companies that are here to do nothing more than to serve a higher master, which is usually a board of directors.
Yeah.
And the fewer people they can keep out, or the more people they can keep out, the more money they can keep for themselves. But to say that the state of North Carolina, I read a statistic, by the way. You made a good career. You made a good move. Glad you took my advice, but in the last 10 years, from 2010 to 2020, Raleigh itself, the population increased by 25%.
Wow.
It's huge.
Yeah.
3.5% a year. 3.5% a year.
Yeah.
And I was looking at other cities, even Charlotte did a good job, but even cities like Greensboro.
Charlotte's tapering off though.
Well, but they actually, they have fewer people now than we do. And that's
Really?
Well, the Raleigh-Durham DMA, which is made up of 22 counties. This is my media background coming into play. 22 counties. Charlotte's Mecklenburg-Made, and they have. Charlotte makes the bulk of that population, although it does go into South Carolina.
Right.
And then north as far how?
It goes all the way up to just below Hickory.
Okay.
You know, yeah, and so the DMA in Charlotte is 6 counties, 7
Yeah.
counties. Here it's a little bit.
It's 22 counties.
Yeah.
Because it takes into account where you live down in Southern Pines.
Right.
And all these little the population bases are kind of spread out.
Right.
But the Raleigh specific
Yeah.
grew 25%, 3.4% a year for a year on average.
For a decade, yeah.
And you're looking at towns like any other town would be happy to get a 0.5% increase.
Yeah, and I truly, I was looking at two
You probably look
areas.
at Austin.
I feel like Raleigh is Austin 10 years ago.
So
Austin is almost getting to the
Yeah.
point where it's unmanageable, and we're having issues in Austin. And obviously, my home base is Austin, Texas, so I'm here, 2 weeks a month, and in Austin 2 weeks a month. But yeah, Austin has had a huge surge. Obviously, everybody's heard and known about that. But I also feel like Raleigh, we have no income tax there, so that's a huge push.
Mhm.
But Raleigh has very similar vibes, and it's just blowing up. You've got Apple coming to town. You've got all these corporations that are coming
Yep.
here. Obviously, the research triangle with the universities and all that. So all these elements kind of combined, make kind of a perfect scenario for the city to just have a huge growth spurt over the next decade.
But yet the footprint of your business, unlike ours,
Yep.
our footprint is pretty much the metro. We don't even go as far as the DMA, because most people, if you live an hour away from here, you're not going to come here.
Yep.
Right.
And
You're coming daily.
You're coming daily,
Yeah.
or every 3 times a week, and you're not going to drive 2 hours, 1 hour in each direction necessarily.
Yep.
You guys, however, are a one stop. You're going to be stopping, staying for at least 3 days, maybe as much as 14. Then you're going to go somewhere else.
Okay.
So I can see you guys, and I think you know that, people flying into RDU.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
You build a facility that I think you're going to be putting money there. It's going to be really, really. I mean, you're going to see people coming in from all over the place.
Yeah, and we built it. I think first and foremost our focus is local, right? And North Carolina, South Carolina, Southern Virginia, that's really going to be like the core of where our outreach is focused in the beginning. I think assessment program, if we can get it to a place where it's on par with the Menninger and the Lindner Center and those types of programs, then yeah, I think that it's way more of a national pull, and people will come from out of state. But part of what we wanted to do too was create this kind of executive programming as well. So we do have 3 concierge suites that are private rooms, king beds, a little bit of nicer amenities and all that in the rooms themselves. But you do have those folks who are an executive, a high profile person of some kind, an athlete, and those folks maybe they don't have the ability to go to a residential treatment. Maybe there's family components that are, and that's where kind of somebody like you I think comes into play, and,
Right.
and kind of getting them involved in outpatient, creating some sort of a PAC team for them. But we definitely recognize that every person is probably not going to be willing to go to residential as much as we think that that's probably a good next step in most cases. And again, we have a really unique opportunity when they come to us to use the leverage, the family, all those different components to channel them in the right direction and hopefully get them set up for success.
Well, you brought up the culture aspect when we first started talking
Yeah.
about this thing, and Macon really is. I give him credit for helping to help us reestablish the culture.
That's good.
And since he's come on board, well, first of all, we've had
How long has that been?
Couple years maybe.
Okay.
I don't. You know.
well, I mean, he and I were doing the radio thing, what,
Yeah, it's probably 2.5, 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
And then when he came on during the fall of 2020, right?
Yeah, I think that's right.
We really took a hard look at, and it wasn't that we weren't serving executive professionals. It just it forced us to kind of look at how to do that, because, and I made this statement when we first opened up. I said we'll look nothing like we look now 5 years from now.
Mhm.
And that I couldn't have been more right. Now, it's my business background, but if you're listening to your client base,
Yeah.
and I mean really listening, and you're trying to apply it to what you want to do. So I read over my mission statement that I first put together to make myself feel good, and it was, first of all, it was way too wordy,
Yep.
and it was just filled with all kinds of things that I picked up on other people's website.
Right.
So our goal now is very simple. We want to be the best treatment center.
Mm-hmm.
Period.
Yep.
Not outpatient. Not. We just want to be the best. Well, and so you're always striving to be. So what we do is, what does that mean?
Right.
You define it every day,
Yep.
and I see what you and we and I started talking 3 years ago or so. What I see now as a need has grown exponentially
Right.
for quality treatment,
Absolutely.
which is what you guys are bringing to the table. And
Yeah, and Lewis, I mean, to get back to that, I mean, how many times do we get phone calls from people who know that eventually they like to end up back here, but there's a process they have to go
Exactly.
through before they are even ready for our level of care,
Mhm.
and we struggle finding the right place to send them.
Yep.
And so, for us as a business, knowing right down the street we can get started as opposed to having to ship them to a different place.
Well, and
That's going to change
Yes.
our conversation tremendously.
And I bring the culture thing back up because in my marketing background that I had, good brands mean one thing in most cases. They mean one thing. They can't mean more than one thing, otherwise it will take away from that one thing they do really, really well.
Mm.
And what you guys are attempting to do is you're attempting to take the beginning piece of this thing, which is quite frankly probably the hardest to stabilize an individual,
Mm-hmm.
right? It certainly, I mean, our part is very important because there's longevity to it,
Mm-hmm.
but you guys are taking them when they're really raw,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not very nice sometimes.
No.
I don't care how much money they make or
Right.
what job.
Well, the more money that they make, the harder they are.
Yes.
Right.
Listen, let's look.
And listen, this is our clientele has a certain degree of entitlement, and we obviously have to navigate that and set boundaries, and we have our policies and protocols and everything that we need to follow for safety purposes. But we again, it's I think it's a part of that is the way is again, it comes back to the people, the team, the staff, the training, and really knowing how to address those people, how to work through those problems and issues, and it comes down to customer service, at the end of the day.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, we just had a screening this morning, and I always try and make the point that we don't ever say no. Well, what do you need for us to do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as long as it makes sense, we always find a way to do it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we don't. And I will tell you, and I think that you guys will be exactly like us. Lewis and I probably spend more of our day working with people who are never going to come into Wellwood.
Sure.
Yeah.
We send people all over the country,
Yeah.
and so I can't tell you how excited we are that we're going to be able to use what you guys are doing as part of what we do.
Yeah.
You're actually going to make our job easier.
Much easier.
And more credible. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes we kind of hold our breath when we have to send somebody somewhere.
Yeah,
Sure.
if you're sending them to Knoxville,
Well,
I
listen,
mean-
and I'm not going to name names, but I've taken high-end individuals who are used to having their toilet paper folded properly, right? I mean, these are people that know what they want, and I've dropped them off at
Haven't heard no in a long
a
time.
high-end detox, and I got a call about an hour and 15 minutes into it, come pick my ass up.
That's right.
And it was not, so people can, they can say, we do this, but when they show up, if you're not doing this, people will call it, they'll call,
Absolutely.
they will.
Yeah.
And I understand that. And so it's important when we tell somebody that this is what you can expect, that's what they get.
And so I knew there was something I was going to tell you guys. So looking back on how our journey has been, we came in here and I was watching the community watch us.
Yeah.
They were very standoffish.
Yeah.
One of the reasons we came up with our networking event that you guys are aware of, right?
Yeah.
Because they didn't know what to think of us when we first opened up.
Yeah.
And I go back to one of my favorite comedians was George Carlin, and he made a comment one time about people who start things that are unique or different. They are path starters. You're gonna be coming in here and you're gonna say to people, "We're a detox," and they go, "Oh, I know what that is," and you're gonna be able to say, "No, you don't."
Yeah, exactly right.
In fact, we do this all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what? I don't want to be all things to all people. I can't be. I don't have enough time. We don't have enough resources.
Yeah.
I can't be. What I'm trying to be is all things to a few people.
That's right.
And I want to. And every day we wake up, we go, okay, how can we make this better? That's what you guys are bringing to the table. When we first opened up, my job was to vet residential programs that would make us look good.
Yeah.
Because that's all I had. They didn't know me. I was a nothing. They were waiting for me to close.
Yeah.
They were waiting for me to see how long I would stay in business.
Right.
And then they were going to refer to me.
Right.
Some of them still haven't.
yeah.
But that's
true.
okay.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but that's,
Are you talking primarily private practice clinicians, people like that nature?
yeah, because the state of North Carolina is primarily dominated by hospital systems.
Right. Alliance
That's
Behavioral Health,
that's
yeah.
the state mental state of most people. Oh, that's treatment.
Right.
And I have to say, not really.
Right. And then, by virtue of that, you've got, all of these North Carolinians who are leaving the state to go to treatment, and they don't have options here. There's options in Asheville, and there's some good.
You've
there
got
are some
but you
programs.
have a state of 10 million people. I say this
Yeah.
all the time. A state of 10 million people, and you have maybe 5 residential addiction treatment programs that you would send anybody to
Right.
if you had a family member. 5, maybe, and I may be stretching that.
Right. Yeah.
And then you take the mental health facilities into the picture. I can only think of 1 or 2.
Right.
Yeah.
The rest serve a generalized population base at the base level. And we saw this yesterday. We went and picked a young man up at a base level
I
facility.
was just going to say, when you think about what we experienced yesterday, it was like walking into a factory.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like.
So we've all-
They were
Like-
checking boxes.
Yeah, and everybody in there, if you didn't have your badge on or whatever, and everybody was so busy trying not to do more than they needed
Right.
to get paid, right?
Totally.
It's like, I was so glad that it was a pretty simple pickup and we were in and out of there pretty quickly.
Right.
But, think about that. I mean,
Yeah.
that was an option.
Well, that's the culture, and
That's-
that's the mentality of these places. It's they're private equity run, and that they're all again reporting back to a board somewhere, and it's all about the bottom line, and get these people kind of through our system as quickly as possible, and it's you're dealing with human beings.
I will
Right.
I will promise you that the people who helped us, the nurse she seemed to be really doing a little extra,
Right.
but the rest of them don't even remember the name of the person that we
Yeah.
picked up yesterday, much less who we were.
Right.
They had one
All right,
job.
I got lunch in 30 minutes. Let's see if you can't get them on out of here.
Well,
Yeah.
so how many folks do you currently have in a staff?
So we've got 4 of us that are on staff full time. Yeah.
Right.
So we've got Justin, Thomas, Desiree, myself who are on staff. We've got some other folks that are
In the process.
In the process.
Okay.
Of
But you're going to be
onboarding.
fairly lean and mean first, right?
Yeah, for sure. But the thing is too that with Detox it's a little bit tough because it's a short stay, and we could go from 5 clients to 10 clients pretty quickly.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
So setting ourselves up so that we've got the team in place and everything, so that we have, again, and we're like 2 floors too, so making sure there's coverage for all areas and everybody's safe and where they need to be, and kind of working through the logistics of all that stuff. So yeah, we certainly will, but again, part of when I was kind of creating all this, I wanted to make sure that we had enough bandwidth and enough money to really do this the right way and give ourselves enough time to really kind of get ahead of that curve. It's gonna take some time to get up to speed. We know that for sure.
Not if I have anything to do with it.
Well, hopefully, hopefully not.
Seriously.
I think you plan for the worst,
Yeah,
for the
that's
best,
right.
That's it.
right?
That's
So
Well, here's what we should do, because we're going to run out of time. Here's what we should do.
yeah,
When they get open, we'll have them back in.
Excellent.
Love to.
And we'll talk about how it's going, what we're doing. But in the meantime, people want to find out about it. How do they do that?
Yeah.
Do you have a website that's up and
we do.
running?
Yep. So we just launched. It's really at this point, it's just a landing page. It's really informational. It has all of our details and all that. So that's www.newwatersrecovery.com. You can find us on LinkedIn, Facebook. Right now, not Instagram yet. We're starting to do a little bit of a PR push over the next few months, working with a local PR company here. But that's probably the best place to get our contact information and all of that.
And we'll make sure that Terry puts it on the screen.
Absolutely.
When we post this, and this will always be at recoveryboys.com, and we'll put a link in for you guys as
That'd
well,
be
so
great.
people, if they're looking for you, they can find you.
Yep.
I think that's really important. Lewis, what else can we do? It's really important for Lewis and I that you guys are very successful, because we want you to.
We want you. We want
Yeah, we want you to be around for
Right.
quite some time, because
Yeah.
it really does make our job, and it makes us more credible. If we can when we send somebody somewhere, if it's not as we advertise, then it hurts us. It doesn't. I mean, it's really
comes
it's a
back on us,
reflection
yes.
Oh, 100%.
on us,
And that's
and
the
we just
first-
don't take chances. I mean,
Yeah.
we just don't.
And you're gonna make mistakes every once in a while, but if you don't have options, and we haven't had any really good options, that aren't. I take it back. We have had options. They've just been so far away,
Right.
and it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah, there is one other point that we hadn't talked about, because we get all the time. Some of the local hospitals here won't detox opiates.
Yeah.
They will stay away from it. And so
That's right.
where I live, where my wife works up in Moore County at First Health, Dr. Jerry, who is who runs the behavioral services, came from the Cleveland Clinic, and he will.
Yeah.
And he'll do it he'll make you feel better. I mean, because I was an opiate addict, we always say, you can certainly die from alcohol withdrawal. If you do go through opiate withdrawal, it won't kill you, but you'll wish you were dead, because that's just how bad it is.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so you need some help, and so you guys will be. I mean, that's not a problem for you guys, right?
Not
No.
a problem at all.
Yeah, and that's
Not at
important,
all.
because
We don't get that a lot.
We don't.
You know that,
Sure.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't know that when we first. We were sending people to these detoxes, and they go, "Well, they don't detox opiates."
They don't.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
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 Well, what they meant was insurance won't pay for it.
Exactly.
Right.
That's the issue. Yeah.
Because my
It's crazy.
understanding is detox is for opiates is basically time, hydration,
Yeah.
comfort meds,
Comfort. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
and
Exactly.
vitamins.
Which is exactly, and
So-
it is an issue. And again, we could talk about that for a long time. The insurance not really being willing to reimburse for that, but if someone can't be made comfortable during that process, or at least ease some of the
Mhm.
discomfort, I mean, that can be the very thing that's going to keep people going back out and using.
Well,
So-
I was gonna say, I know where I can go get some comfort and
Right.
peace. It's out on the street.
Yeah,
And I'll kick
100%.
this thing, and I'll figure it out next week. But I'm not gonna feel like this anymore. And I had this conversation literally this morning with the mother of a 20-year-old who asked, "Do you think I'll ever not feel like this?"
Yeah.
I mean, I know how he feels. It's such a dark place. He said, "Why come when I take a pill, all the sadness goes away until the pill goes away, and then the sadness comes back?" Really simple way to describe what we
Wow.
live.
100%.
And trying to explain it to him about the receptors. He don't want to hear all that stuff.
Right.
He doesn't really care. He just knows that if he gets this, the sadness goes away,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and he's tired of being sad. It's like, oh, man, you're talking about breaking it down to a base level.
Absolutely.
It's just so sad. But you got to have people who understand it, and also who want to help.
Yeah.
You try and take a heroin addict or any street drug addict to a hospital, and look for some empathy, you're gonna have to look really hard.
Yeah.
You know, it's just not that
And,
important.
by the way, all street drug users aren't street people. They are high-end folks.
Yeah, they
in
are.
some cases.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Who have been getting away with it because they can afford not to necessarily go on the street
Right.
and just keep it going because
Right.
of their resources. So,
Yeah.
Right.
so what at the end, I'm elated. You guys are moving forward. What are you doing
We're
here?
almost there.
What are you doing? You should be over there working.
We're
right now.
almost there.
Yeah,
Okay?
yeah.
That's what we're doing directly after this.
Well, we will definitely have you guys back, and we really do appreciate
And
it.
they're
that
literally,
you're here.
You're literally, how many? It can't be more than 5 miles.
No,
Less
it's
than
not.
that, probably 2.5 if that.
Yeah.
But we're gonna start doing hard hat tours come May. So sheetrock's going up now. We're gonna start bringing some press through and folks like yourself, obviously that are kind of important providers and referrents for us, just so you can kind of see it come together.
Right.
And it's pretty cool. It's obviously we had to go through with Department of Health and Human Services and permitting and all that, and that took some time, and that we were shooting for kind of a March open, and we got kind of pushed back a couple months, which at the end of the day is probably not bad considering everything that we have to navigate these days with supply chain issues and all that stuff. But we're almost there. We're almost there. I remember you were calling me. I remember you calling me like a little over a year ago, maybe, and you were like, "What's going on? When are you opening? What's like? We need
Well,
you. We
dropped
need
on-
you." And I'm like,
you dropped
"Look,
on the face of the earth.
I'm trying."
Because you're sick and tired of hearing it.
Yeah. And I was like, it's coming, I promise. And
Yeah,
that's, I think, when we had finally gotten, we had a building that, literally on the 31st on 2020, on the 31st, we were about to put an offer in on this building. And the broker called me and he said, "You're not going to believe it, but they just got an offer for $750,000 over ask." And we were, $500,000 over what we were going to offer. And so that fell through at that point.
This is
But
a
it was
commercial building.
yeah, and I think I don't know if somebody was just parking money or what was going on with that scenario, because it was somebody just like out of the blue. But everything kind of happened the way that it was supposed to get us to
We're-
this building. And where we are.
I'm sorry it took us so long, but I am really glad you guys
Yep.
got on board, and
Yep.
I cannot wait. And
Yeah.
I'll be the first one through the door, other than the two of you and Des.
Not you personally.
Yeah,
No.
Yeah, he
I
won't
don't
be
know.
needing the
I don't know
services.
if it's as nice as it sounds like. It might be kind of
Right.
relapse. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
I've been looking for the time.
Yeah, listen. Hey, a week and
Exactly.
hanging.
I can
and
always-
massages. And,
I'm still sick as hell, so it didn't really matter.
Right,
Right?
right.
Well, look,
That's
we
a
want to
fact.
thank you guys for coming on.
Yeah, we
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
You're very
Thank you
welcome.
so
sir.
much. We look forward to it.
Yeah,
Look forward
for
to
sure.
it. I'm Macon.
And I'm Lewis,
And
and
we're
we're
the
the Recovery
Recovery
Boys.